As the songs of awakening rang through, the world was created. The silence was broken.
Middle-earth, with its rolling hills, broken mountains, flowing rivers, and beautiful forest, was created.
Cellar Door is a journey into the mythology, the mystery, and the beauty of Middle-earth. Sit back.
Close your eyes.
And imagine.
Welcome to Cellar Door, an exploration into the fantastic world of J.R.R Tolkien. In this episode, we will discuss the creator himself and his influences. My name is Louis Lacau.
And I am Neisha T. Mulchan. John Ronald Reuel Tolkien, of Germanic descent, was born in South Africa. Growing up in a landscape filled with beauty, nature became a strong influencer in his life and on his upbringing, and that was different than most. J.R.R. was born to Arthur Tolkien and Mabel Suffield Tolkien on January 3, 1892. After Arthur Tolkien died from complications of rheumatic fever, Mabel settled with 4-year-old J.R.R. and his younger brother Hilary in the country hamlet of Sarehole in Birmingham, England. The death of his father taught young Ronald Tolkien many lessons. He gained an understanding that women, in particular his mother Mabel, could never be placed on the sideline, and instead are a source for strength and inspiration. Mabel Tolkien died in 1904, and the Tolkien brothers were sent to live with a relative, placed in boarding homes with a Catholic priest assuming guardianship in Birmingham. J.R.R. went on to get his first-class degree at Exeter College, specializing in Anglo-Saxon and Germanic languages and classic literature, and then goes on to teach at Oxford University.
Tolkien wrote his first fantasy story, The Green Great Dragon. His mother corrects him and says you should say the Great Green Dragon, possibly sparking his first interest in languages. He also introduced to his first major inspiration, George MacDonald, through his mother, whose works he used as Tolkien's bedtime reading. The Great Green Dragon was an early homage to Tolkien's love for MacDonald's fantasies. In the mid to late 1800s, a man by the name of George MacDonald began creating what was to be the roadmap for fantasy writing in England. The Scottish author moved to London and petitioned to have literature added to the formal curriculum to be taught in college. This tiny action sparked the creative engines of generations of writers and literary clubs, many existing today. MacDonald was most notably known for his novel Fantasies, which concentrates on the journey of one man going out to find his inheritance. But as he drifts off to sleep, he awakes in the world of fairies. There, he learns to evolve as a man, and the realm becomes the training grounds for what would be needed for him in the real world. This reflection of Arthurian literature, which also becomes an influencer in Tolkien's writing. MacDonald's character bears a striking resemblance to the story of Aragorn, who represents a fledgling character finding his true path, burdened by the legacy by destiny. The response to this book lit a beacon of budding writers to engage with their imagination and turn fable to fantasy. This combination of Christian stories mixed with children's fables molded the minds of some of our greatest writers.
Tolkien's move to England was a sudden change to his world, and even more so was being forced to live with his guardian when his mother died. This culmination of change and loss started the next chapter in his life. Moved from green fields and a beautiful countryside to the stark industrial wasteland that was England, and being relegated to the care of his family's Catholic priest, Tolkien loses access to the beauty that had inspired him as a child and to the care of his mother. But rather than lose touch with that imagination, this change in landscape, family, and connection shaped Tolkien's writings and fueled his urge to drift away into fantasy. This is an influence we can see throughout his storytelling. Tolkien explores loss of home and family, loss of love and fealty as motivators for change, for overcoming grief and fear, and for achieving something greater than any one being could ever imagine.
Hail, Eärendil, brightest of angels above the Middle Earth. One of the first poems on the Legendarium of Tolkien was reflective of Germanic storytelling, Eärendil being based off of characters in Germanic mythology. This laid the seeds for the stories to come. C.S. Lewis said, "Myths are lies." Tolkien easily responded back, "No, myths aren't lies. A myth is a story that tells you something so important that it doesn't matter whether it's true."
The tales of Beren and Luthien were inspired by Tolkien and the undying love he had for his wife Edith. They represented the harmonious connection that he and Edith had, which he reflects in his writing of the fated duo, playing in a field, fighting to save their lands, their kinsmen, and legacy.
And his second love of his life was an elite literary society, the Inklings. Tolkien founded this society with a number of his literary scholastic colleagues as a medium for them to offer their writings in progress, receive feedback, critique, or favor. While Tolkien was a founding and regular member of the Inklings, he did not fully subscribe to their philosophy. He allowed the members to read his appendices, but never an abridged version of his works. He spent 7 years editing Lord of the Rings, not allowing an editor to touch his works. He intended for Lord of the Rings to be released as a single volume, but the publishing company insisted. He created the trilogy, splitting the book into 3.
The Inklings were an informal literary discussion group associated with the University of Oxford, England, for nearly 2 decades between the early 30s and late 1949. The Inklings were literary enthusiasts who praised the value of narrative in fiction and encouraged the writing of fantasy. And today we have many Inkling societies around the world. Clive Staple Lewis, also known as C.S. Lewis, was a British writer and a lay theologian. He held academic positions in English literature at both Oxford University and Cambridge. He is best known for his works of fiction, especially the Screwtape Letters, the Chronicles of Narnia, and the Space Trilogy, and for his non-fiction Christian apologetics such as Mere Christianity, Miracles, and The Problem of Pain. Lewis and fellow novelist J.R.R. Tolkien were close friends. He was in fact a driving force behind Tolkien's urge to complete his works. For every book Lewis wrote, Tolkien would work on one more, because of his competitive nature. Though he didn't move to publish until Lewis had already published at least 4 books, and they were in circulation. In a scale beyond the norm, they had accomplished unsurpassed feats of fantasy and imagination. They both served on the English faculty at Oxford University and were active in the informal Oxford literary group known as the Inklings. And according to Lewis's memoirs, Surprised by Joy, he was baptized in the Church of Ireland, but fell away from his faith during adolescence. Lewis returned to Anglicanism at the age of 32, owing to the influence of Tolkien and other friends, and he became an ordinary layman of the Church of England. Lewis's faith profoundly affected his work, and in his wartime radio broadcasts on the subject of Christianity brought him wide acclaim. Thank you for joining us for our looking glass view at the life and influences of Tolkien, the origins of one of the greatest writers of our time. Join us for our next episode, in which we will begin our exploration into the legends of Middle-earth. My name is Neisha T. Mulchan.
And I'm Louis Lacau.
And this is Cellar Door, a journey into Middle-earth.